Well, when I was texting with Klatt, and I was like, hey, you want to come on the show, talk about a game between a team from Alabama and a team from Texas? Thought it was going to be more about the Longhorns, Klatt, but boy, that A&M game's got some spice to it now.
I tell you, like, I don't know what we didn't pay to get SEC rights, but can we go back to the negotiating?
Hey, we were saying we've never seen anything like this. You obviously played the game. You've been around it. You're a lead analyst now for Fox. Is there anything close to this?
No. There's been – well, I mean, if you go back to like 10-Year War, Bo and Woody, I think they got after it a little bit. And I think back in the day – there was more animus between coaches, but that was usually born out of longevity at locations and rivalries and the like. This is totally different, and obviously, like the elephant in the room is that it's spurred on by the current conditions in the marketplace, if you will, with NIL and transfer and everything along the lines. I do find it interesting, and I know that this is going to be a generalization, but I've always felt like the SEC did as good a job as any conference of not infighting publicly. Regardless of what went on down in Destin or wherever the meetings were, whatever happened behind closed doors, they always seemed to present a united front to the rest of the country. And this is kind of fracturing that, regardless of what was going on, what has gone on in terms of recruiting and how y'all operate down there. It was always a united front, and now it's not. And I think it's fascinating to see how this is all going to play out. And this is conversations that every coach is having. What's interesting to me, and I know I'm long-winded, but you guys are used to that. I was in Phoenix a couple weeks ago at the college football spring meetings that were basically every conference but the ACC and the SEC. And you go and talk with all these coaches. And to a man, they sit there and they're like, man, this is crazy. We've got to change this. This is unsustainable. This is wild. This is not why I got into this business. And then in the next sentence, they'll be like, well, this player's only asking for about $20,000 a month, so I'm sure we can handle that. And I'm like, what just happened? So this is going to sound bad, but I just don't trust any of the coaches. So when they're barking out loud to boosters or whomever, they're serving their own best interest. And that's kind of the way I've always felt. People ask me, like, do you believe coaches when they say they're not going to leave a location? No. Show me the next coach that I trust is the first one. So I know that that's harsh, but that's kind of where I sit.
When you have two guys who have been friends, and I've heard Nick Saban before, privately and publicly saying very nice things about Jimbo Fisher, and then publicly Jimbo Fisher says, I didn't answer his call this morning, quote, we're done, end quote. That does add a little bit of juice to the game there. You've been around coaches for basically your whole adult life. Can a bridge be built back after something like this, or do you think those two coaches are done, their friendship are done? Because this is starting to remind me of my childhood and the way the old Southwest Conference was before they imploded on themselves.
Yeah, that's a great call. That's exactly. It is a bit old Southwest Conference, which I kind of love. I don't know if there can be a bridge built back, but I don't know if that's a bad thing. I think that we probably in the modern day of sport as fans, we probably have gotten too used to all of these competitors being too close. We're all old, and so I don't mean to throw you guys under the bus as well, but back in the day, we didn't have these cozy relationships between competitors like we do now. And I think social media has brought that about. And I think there's this expectation that all these guys are going to be cozy and friendly. And obviously they had a friendship going back to when Jimbo coached under Nick. I don't think that a bridge has to be built back. I don't know that it can be, in particular when it seemed like to me, guys, and I know this is 30,000 foot view. It seemed like to me, Nick was lobbing some grenades, but at A&M in general. And whether that was Jimbo specifically or A&M in general, hey, they did this, right? Now, I think it's implied that Jimbo knew and was in on the game. And listen, all of us have heard those stories, and I've heard from very reliable sources that they absolutely, quote, bought, a lot of their recruiting class with NIL deals. I don't know if it's illegal though, so for Nick to be upset about it, I think is fascinating. But what I thought was ratcheting up the heat was when Jimbo went immediately to the personal route and called him a narcissist. It's like, okay, so one guy's criticizing the overall operation, and then the other guy goes immediately and is like, he's a narcissist. And it's like, geez, that went from 0 to 10 very quickly. I feel like Brick, an anchorman, like that, Brick had a trident. It was crazy.
Joel Klatt from Fox is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Fox, Joel's going to talk with us about this. Fox will have the Alabama-Texas game. It has not been announced as the big noon kickoff, but you can look at the schedule.
Listen, I'm just thankful for Nick and Jimbo that this is no longer like the biggest topic of the day, right? It's no longer like, what time were you kicking the game against Alabama and Texas? It's like we're talking about, the infighting, which is great.
Yeah, right now, Saban Fisher hotter than game time temperature in Austin for your kick of Texas and Alabama. Yes.
There you go.
But Nick Saban talked about parity, and that was a comment that was misunderstood as well. And what he was saying, he wasn't saying that he wanted parity in football. What he was saying is the parity he wanted is that everybody has the same opportunity at scholarship and financial aid. And then what you make above that, that's up to you, right? Or that's up to your ability, or that's up to how you market yourself, or whatever the case is. But the truth is, Joel, the only way there can be more parity is, whether it's by cheating or NIL deals or what, is for teams to spend to catch up. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, those programs are willing to spend whatever it takes to be great programs, and that's why they're great.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating when you look at parity in college football. So I firmly believe that the only avenue to parity is a more even revenue distribution model. And I don't know if that's going to be possible, but the only way that it happens, in my estimation, I haven't talked about this a lot publicly. I firmly believe that every single non-conference game across the country should be stripped out of individual conference television deals. This is how you drive parity, is that you fix the schedules and you equalize revenue distribution. Maybe not equalize, that's probably the wrong term, is that you somewhat smooth it out. So if you were to pull out every non-conference game from the SEC deal with ESPN that they have, and every non-conference game from the Big Ten contract and Pac-12 contract and all of those, and then the CFP were to own the postseason and the non-conference, and then distribute revenue from there, then you would get a more equal revenue distribution model. You could also fix the scheduling gaps that we have in college football, because that entity, and I think it should be the college football playoff, that entity, because it's already there. Like the structure of governance is kind of already there with the CFP. And if we were to pull out the non-league games and clump them into the CFP deal, which had the postseason, the expanded playoff, which we'll have in the future, and every single non-league game, well, then you can create the non-league schedule year by year and drive parity by driving more competitive matchups. Last place finishers would face last place finishers across the landscape. First place finishers would face first place finishers. So then you would have a more equitable schedule in the sense that it would mimic in some ways the NFL, where you play a first place schedule or you play a last place schedule. And so those schedules are more difficult for the better teams. And you would start to distribute revenue on a more equal playing field, because what we're about to have in the next couple of years, I don't know if this is answering your question or not, but what we're about to have in the next couple of years is the SEC and the Big Ten are going to go way up with their revenue distribution, over $100 million per school annually. Everybody else is going to be fighting and scratching and clawing to get to $50 million annually, and they're probably not going to get there. Certainly not the ACC, who's locked in already until 2036. Maybe the Pac-12 gets a good deal, and their media rights. We'll see with the newly constructed Big 12 what they're able to get. But we're about to see a lack of parity like we've never seen before. And we're already seeing a lack of parity like we've never seen before currently. And that's only going to get exacerbated over the next few years as the revenue becomes so much different throughout the country. So I think we need to pull non-league games out from individual conference television deals, put them in the overarching deal, and then distribute revenue that way.
Most people get really uncomfortable watching confrontation. I can only assume Greg Sankey was extremely uncomfortable watching this thing play out. How do you think he reacts? What does he do?
Oh, that's a good one. I like Greg a lot. I think Greg's really good at what he does. He and I have people probably won't want to hear this, but like he and I have formed a good relationship, very good relationship. We talk a lot about just this whole deal. One of the things that I respect most about Greg is that he has, I wouldn't say a motto, but he firmly believes that he should not apologize for who he is or who his conference is. And he moves forward that way. So I don't think Greg is going to overreact. I think he probably sees this for what it is, which is two individuals getting hot and having this kind of dust up. Now, what he is going to look at is what are the causes of this dust up? What's going on below the surface, and how do we fix that? I don't know how we fix NIL. I don't know how we fix transfer portal. But until we do some of those things, then we're going to continue to have this. People are going to continue to allege tampering and inducement, and those things are on the books as rules, right? This is by the way, and I know this isn't specifically about Greg, but I can't stand this notion that everyone's like, well, there's no rules with NIL. That's like saying, well, I don't want to get political. So there are rules on the books. You just have to enforce them, right? There are rules about defining a booster, defining inducements, defining tampering. Just enforce the rules that are on the books. And you can have a much more, I think, clean space with NIL and transfer portal. Now, having said that, the way Greg is going to react is going to tackle those issues. I don't think he's going to talk to those two individuals. They're far too experienced and I think level-headed to understand that this is a quick dust up, and they're going to do everything they can to put it behind them so that they can continue to focus on their team. In particular, Nick. Nick is not going to engage in this much longer. You guys know that as well as I do. He's going to focus on the process. He's going to put it behind him, and he's going to move forward. So I don't think Greg's going to have to do much with these two individuals as much as he'll have to look at the underlying issue and start to tackle some of those.
I like the way you don't want to get political, but you have the Marxism revenue distribution deal for college football there. It's not very political there either.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
What, those are shots across the bow. Throwing a term like that in. Well, it's a way to maintain. Well, then apparently, you know what? Then don't watch the NFL because that's.
Oh, I got you there, Dunaway.
Yeah, but I'm speaking from the southern footprint where life's pretty good these days. I don't know if you noticed a Greg Sankey quote here. Two SEC teams played for the national championship last year. Why would we want to divvy the money up evenly everywhere else?
No, that's and I get that. I think it's short-sighted on his part. Part of the issue with college football is that we have too many people acting and looking out for their own best interest. And until we have someone acting on the interest of the whole, then college football is going to continue to have these issues.
Would you take that job? Would you be the commissioner of college football if they offered it to you?
Of course I would. There's other than my Lord and Savior and my family, there's nothing I love more than college football. This is a phenomenal sport, and I love it with everything that I have. And there's certainly issues. I think one of the biggest issues, actually the biggest issue, is that we do not have an overarching governing body that looks out for the whole. So right now we have just all of these silos looking out for themselves. Each school looks out for themselves. Each conference looks out for themselves. And the NCAA, basically abdicated their responsibility to govern the whole. And that model has just totally blown up, and they've been completely inept at their job. what we have to have, and I'm sure I've given you guys this before, it's a bad analogy, but I'll give it anyways. We have to have basically a constitutional convention of college football where, after the Revolutionary War and before the Constitutional Convention, we were an independent nation, but every one of the 13 colonies basically acted in their own best interest. Some were adhering to international law, some weren't. And until those guys got into Independence Hall and gave us the Constitution, we didn't have a federalized government, an umbrella over what would become the United States of America. We need that over college football, because right now, what's best for the SEC is not what's best for the whole. What's best for the Big Ten is not what's best for the whole. And if these people and entities continue to operate acting in their own best interest, then the sport will deteriorate in the future. It's an inevitability. So we need people that will step back from that and say, what's better for the whole? The NFL did it way back when under Pete Rozelle, and they basically sat in a room and they said, we get it. Some of these franchises could do much better than others, but we're all going to do better than any one can do if we just kind of aggregate, circle the wagons, and go forth, moving forward together. College football needs that desperately. And until strong men and smart men like Greg Sankey understand that, then we're going to continue to have these issues of fragmentation.
All right, he is Joel Klatt. You will see him on the Alabama-Texas game, which we never quite got around to because
we didn't. It is going to kick at 11 local in Austin. It's not the first time games have kicked at 11 local. It's not the first time games have been hot. And those that claim that we're foregoing some sort of big number and rating, it's like, just go look at the ratings from last year. Every large game outside of conference championship games, every single one basically outside of maybe Georgia and Clemson, was either a 2:30 Central SEC window or a big noon game.
That's right. Klatt is right about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The people will watch. It's the biggest game of the day, and advantage Alabama in the heat. They've got a deeper roster than Sark does. It's Alabama fans shouldn't bitch about it. They've got a better roster.
I could not agree more. And what happened to the old adage, this is again showing my age, shouting at the clouds, of like, you just tell us who and when and we'll order the buses.
That's right.
Like, can someone say that? Can someone please stop whining about kick times? Just kick the ball off and go play, for crying out loud.
Klatt, thank you. Have a great weekend. Always great talking with you.
See you, boys.
All right, take care. Joel Klatt with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.
Does he ever come to Birmingham?
Oh, yeah. For the USFL. I know you know.
That guy has been flying to Birmingham.
He has been.
And
a lot.
They're only halfway through the season.
Really? It seems like it's been going longer than that.
This is week 6 coming up of the 10-week season.